Hey Collective, it's Al, and I'm coming to you with an additional video to a post I'm putting out on LinkedIn this evening, which centers around finding the spark of genuinity that ignites something within you, and how many of the people that come across either the video or the posting on LinkedIn will realize that they are part of a greater evolutionary cycle that is calling them forward somehow. Whether that be in a spiritual context or a scientific context, there seems to be a bunch of crossroads and timelines coming together, and that it's kind of becoming more apparent the more that we progress forward that it is intentionally being done so as to bring certain energies forward that had been basically studying and evolving themselves in a way that would somehow be service to humanity. And one of the things that happened as I was writing the post is I saw the breath of life that was there, of the different parallels and different timelines that seemed to be colliding within the context of what I was saying, which was, in a nutshell, that it seems that there is a group of souls that has never existed all simultaneously before in the same simulation that seem to be here on purpose and seem to be here walking in that purpose, and that they seem now to be being brought together so as to represent the presence of something much higher than us and how we as a species evolve forward. But one of the things that happens when you are part of such a cycle is that some of the skill sets and gifts that you have been given because of the struggles that you have endured in life, you don't know that those struggles are the magic that is needed for the others that are kind of observing you or part of your tribes, right? You don't understand that necessarily because it's just who you are. And some of you have this ability to think in ways that is not common to everyday people, but that you somehow neglect to realize is special because it's just how you operate. And it reminds me of something that Elon Musk once said about how he doesn't see why people can't see the world the way that he sees it because it's just plain as day, forgetting in the moment that it's that speciality of how he was brought forth and the amalgamation that he represents that is unique to him that makes it so obvious the outcomes that other people will experience. In the same way that a spiritualist like myself or you or the scientist out there that is able to perceive the world in a specific way that helps them prove or disprove something. It's in the context of how they interpret the data that they are receiving that makes them unique and makes them stand out. That's what a breakthrough is. But for spiritualists in particular, it's important to realize that a lot of what you are encountering or what you have been subjected to has been in preparation for something that you're now stepping into in this new world unfolding. Meaning that you're being called to step forward in identifying what it is, that spark of pure gold that exists within you, that is what's going to be effective in helping everyone else around you. And one of the tricks that we're finding as we walk together through this journey is that each of us seem to fit into a greater tapestry of creation in a way that complements other people. And what we're experiencing right now is that there seems to be loose ends that are being tied in our life experience in a way that somehow brings the whole masterpiece together. And so I wanted to kind of phrase it in a way where a wider audience might be able to understand the high concept idea and principality behind the post in a grounded way that people will be able to respond to much more adeptly. So let's say that you are a director of a film, and you realize that you need to bring an ensemble cast together, but there needs to be a lot of preparation in how that's going to be done in order to effectively pull off the masterpiece you're working on. So what you begin to do is you begin to do the script development and all of the finer details before you start looking for casting. And then at the same time, having somebody then be a scout, if you will, for the key players that we brought into the project once it's ready to move forward. Sometimes the people that are going to be selected don't know of the part they're being cast in yet, right? They're not aware that they have been prepared lifelong for that particular role because they haven't gotten the script yet. But it doesn't change the fact that the engineer, let's say, of the simulation that we're speaking of hasn't already created the simulation that people will then be interacting in that maybe hasn't existed before. Or in the case of the director, creating a world that may have not existed just as of yet, because the key players that were needed in order to fully manifest it had yet not developed their skill set to be able to carry it off. So let's say at some point it becomes clear that they have found the right people to man the stations needed for the new creation to begin. They bring everything together from behind the scenes and they pull it forward with the cast and they begin pre-production and they begin working it out. And so for those of you who are truly spiritual that are being called, or even some of you who are masters in the scientific or in the material world, are now finding yourself being asked to step into those new roles in a way that has been part of your trajectory the entire time. And it can prove a little jarring to you that you have been part of it this entire time because you just thought that you were encountering life and that you were kind of placed in these things by happenstance. But you suddenly realize that if you had not gone through the journeys and through the preparation lifelong, that you could not stand in the position that is being asked of you now in a forward-facing motion. So fine, everybody's now on the new set, right? Everybody that's meant to be there from the cast and the crew are now all present, and the director now has to actually begin filming. And what happens in this context is that everyone is then brought together in a really wonderful way somehow, magically, and the film is then put into production and recorded. And as it's recorded, the world gets to witness and come along for the ride. Well, there's no difference in the context of what we're speaking to on a spiritual or on a progressive level as far as humanity's evolution. Everyone knows that you are being observed by someone, whether it's governments, whether it's your neighbors, whether it's God, whether it's Allah, whoever you believe in, you know that you are being observed. But what people are neglecting is that you have been observed so as to ensure that you fit within the confines of the new world unfolding. And so if you don't break that down in a way that an audience can understand, then you're going to run into a lot of apprehension to the changes being asked of us because they just don't understand what is at the core value of what's going on. But if you put it in context and if you have the wording given to you by a higher power, then you understand that you need to speak to people at their evolutionary stance that doesn't look down on them, but instead raises them up and brings them into the fold so as to understand what it is that we are now speaking about, right? Because one of the things that we're facing as a collective consciousness is we're watching a lot of corrupted and hypocritical industries and positions and people kind of collapsing in on themselves because they can't handle the weight of the lie, right? And so the lie is kind of imploding on itself, and the rest of us are watching and bearing witness to it, knowing that we're being prepared for what follows the collapse of these things. But what has been happening behind the scenes, for those of you who resonate with this particular video, is that you, if you're part of the class that's graduating the academy, are now being asked a very interesting question, which is, let's say that you have mastered yourself. Can you help other people find their purpose and walk in their light in a way that is a teacher or that is somehow a guide to another being? Or are there skill sets that you have developed over this lifetime and probably previous lifetimes if you believe in that has prepared you now to have a forward-facing part in what's at play? Because if you have, then identifying those creative outlets is super important to you. And it goes back to something as simple as, are there things that you see in the world that you can thread together that help you predict in an analytical way what's going to happen next? Because if you can, then you may be of service to divine light in being able to speak to that and help other people navigate the seas that come with uncertainty. When someone's lost and drowning, can you hold the fort and hold the light in that and be like, everything is going to be okay. I've been through this. Here's what I did. Here's my suggestion for you as a brother or a sister or a mother or father. You don't have to take my advice, but this is how I navigated the seas. Because some of you have been through some horrendous experiences that have not been seen in the human species before. A byproduct of ultimate corruption finally coming to an end. The storm before the dawn. But in your life experience, you hold a thread of truth that will break through anyone else's bias because they will know that you're coming from authenticity. And your purpose then becomes to live your truth outwardly so as to help other people feel more at ease with the transitions that come with change, right? Because the one thing that is constant is change. But what a lot of people are experiencing, or not a lot of people, but what many people are experiencing who are lost in the shadow, is that they're experiencing the fear that comes from the uncertainty of the new stage being set and who set the stage, forgetting that if you are truly faithful or full of hope, that the love and compassion you feel for each other is a guiding force that is helping you understand that it's in your strength and your betterment to follow this path because it's what's going to happen regardless. And it reminds me of that adage of, does knowing the outcome change the fact that it's going to happen? Or do you understand that there are things that need to happen in order for the betterment of all? And can you then hold that fort and that candle in the wind as people start to freak out and help them become more at ease with evolution and with something that's actually filled with hope and with redemption for us all? And so what I wanted to focus on with the video is to remind everybody that it's sometimes just in the way that you sometimes speak and the vibrational output that you represent, or it might be in the energy that you carry into a room. Because all of us have experienced something a little strange and a little odd, which is, have you ever been into a room where everybody's minding their own business, let's say a bar setting, and suddenly somebody walks in and everyone in the bar immediately turns and notices the person enter the room? Typically, the person that we're talking about is completely oblivious to the fact that they carry that immense amount of influence because they're carrying what's called the it factor. And for those of you who understand what that is in a Hollywood context, you'll understand what I mean. But for the layman person, the rest of us, what that means is they carry a spark that is so authentic to themselves that they stand out amongst the crowd. And you can't avert your eyes from that person. Now, unfortunately for that innocent person who's usually unaware and in slumber, they may not be aware that they carry that. And so it feeds on an insecurity immediately on that individual who has now suddenly feels like, why is everybody staring at them? They feel like something's wrong and it can trigger them. But what they don't realize is that that is preparing them for a future that is now possible for them. Because maybe they will become famous or serve their higher calling that has a public face to it, that later down the road will require them to have the thicker skin, required of them not caring what other people are looking at. And to understand through that life experience that they were always protected to begin with, and that the spark that was there was always in them from even before. Because when they reach the destination, when the opportunity meets the prepared person, everything falls into place. And you go, oh, okay, I get it. That's why people can't stand me. It's because I really am genuinely a nice person. And when people are lost in the disillusion of life and stuck in pain, someone who has healed themselves can be very threatening to their existence because it reminds them that you can do the work and heal yourself. It takes a great deal of work and effort. But you, just by being that person, that vessel walking into a room, carry all of that information and assimilation outwardly. And there's not anything you can do about it except accept the blessing and realize that there's a purpose to it. And then follow the guidance that comes with that light that is blossoming within. But the thing is that as human beings, when you live your authenticity, you don't always understand or identify what it is that is unique to you. Like Elon Musk not understanding that the way he thinks engineering-wise is an anomaly to the rest of the planet, right? And so the warning then comes to those of us stepping into these positions, into this light, that you have to understand that by being removed from the environment that you're in and being in your own world constantly, you sometimes run the risk of detaching from the rest of society and not understanding the pain from which they're speaking to. So the people I'm speaking to in this video are the people who bridged those worlds, right? There are masters in our environment that have the ability to control the material world in a way by which it's how they think, and they kind of are the directors of their own existence. And they solve problems that the rest of us can't necessarily solve in the material world. But sometimes forgetting that there are spiritual beings who do the exact same thing, but not in the material world. Their energy focuses on balancing and harmonizing the chaos that comes with order. Okay. So, but how do you speak to that to someone who is a scientist if you don't break it down in a way that makes logical sense? So here's what I'm going to say. For those of you who are more scientific, who are trying to understand spirituality and the importance of spiritual existence and the keys and benefits that come with that type of life, what I will say to you is this. There are beings amongst us, human beings, just like everybody else, who have dedicated their lives to their own personal development in pursuit of how it serves other people. And those vessels of light did something that most people don't do, which is they basically surrendered all of their freedom to a higher power who has been guiding them through life all along and will eventually seat them at the table that was always set for them if they endeavor this. It's a personal thing. So for you as a scientist, if you're struggling to understand such devotion, it does not matter necessarily always that you agree to that belief system. It's just enough that the majority of the population does believe in that changes and sways the evolution of a species. Because if enough people believe in something, it's a concerted effort being put on something by the universe to help the species evolve and is somehow trying to guide them so there's not absolute mayhem. But just because you don't necessarily agree with that belief system, or you don't agree with everything that they represent, it doesn't negate the fact that it's still happening on behalf of a higher consciousness, right? So you have to sometimes suspend your own personal belief system long enough to understand another person's perspective. And what I'll say is that it's the way that sometimes a scientist is so practical that their non-emotional response will be the clarity needed to solve a problem that no one else can solve because they get caught in their own emotional landscaping, right? But it's the analytical being, the scientist, who can break through that sometimes because they can perceive the non-emotional realm in a way that's very A plus B equals C. The engineering mind, who doesn't listen to the external voices that come with other people's opinions or other people's emotional ranges. They could care less. They're looking at how to solve a problem that benefits the most amount of people. Well, a spiritual person does the exact same thing on a spiritual level, meaning that they're seeing to the needs of everyone collectively and are super protective of their tribes. And I don't mean like tribe like some sort of Native American tribe, but I mean like the soul tribes that they belong to. Because their endeavor in life is to harmonize the horrendous things that happen in our world and help people better understand why they're allowed, something that a scientist can't do, right? And so two avenues are serving the world in different ways, but sometimes tend to try to negate the other side in order to, I don't know, out of egoist pride or whatever. But the people that we're speaking to who are now set to take center stage in this new paradigm are the bridge work between those realms. And it is in how that they carry themselves and the grace and gratitude and the love and light for each other that will bond and heal things that need to be healed in order for our collective to move forward. And so for those of you who are understanding what I'm saying, the director basically has an amazing script, and it's great to have a lead. But what happens when you bring two leads together from different houses or different philosophies or different backgrounds, and you have them coexist in the same paradigm outwardly? What conversations will those two beings have that will help everyone else evolve and how they project it outwardly? Because for a lot of people, have you ever noticed that nobody really believes in the romanticism of a happy ending anymore? Because we've been so bombarded with suffrage and with like hypocrisy, greed, and all this other stuff, and lies and betrayals and all the lower vibrational stuff that you have to kind of work through in order to get to your reward season. A lot of us have never really truly witnessed what a reward cycle looks like because a lot of beings gave up. A lot of human beings have been so bombarded and beaten down that they eventually give up. But the beings that we're speaking to right now are in opposition to that. They're standing in a place of peace, not in war. And they're looking at the world from a lens of unity and harmonizing all of the different parts that each of them represent. Because if you truly understand what I'm saying, understand that some of you are yourself a piece to the puzzle. It is in your journey that other people will rise. And you don't necessarily always understand that because you don't know yourself to be anything different than just you. You don't know that you're special. A lot of you are really genuinely humble because that's your purpose. If you walk in grace, you don't have to command a room. You just do. There's nothing you do outwardly. It's something the great architect bestowed upon you because of the tireless work you did of service and loyalty to whatever that is, your calling. But you don't force it. And so it's a little bit jarring to you to then have the world turn and actually see you finally. And it's to those people that we're speaking to. Because imagine, if you will, the strength of a well-cast project on a world stage. And especially if you're from the universal consciousness, how attractive that is in place of a species that was dying out because there was no growth. It had been so inundated with hypocrisy, greed, corruption, lies, betrayal, sexual, just all the worst of the worst. We've seen it play out. And then on top of it, we're now bombarded with that energy constantly through very corrupt media. That the idea now to reestablish something new that breaks through that in order to help the species evolve suddenly garners a lot more universal attention because the breed now has a shot at making the transition. And those of you I'm speaking to understand and resonate with the importance behind such motion. So you're more willing to understand the importance of what it means to be brought together and what you're going to harmonize. Because here's the thing. Let's say that you have a beautiful vessel of light whose heart is as light as a feather, who is destined to be with their life mate, who is done the same work but in a different way and somehow has the same heart. If those beings are brought out into the world somehow and they come together, imagine the spark of hope that beats fear always. It trumps fear every time. What spark of hope that will instill in others and the healing properties that come with just them having come together. And then you look at that in business. Let's say that you have platonic friends who are like brothers and sisters or whatever the dynamic is that are brought together in a business venture. It is the third thing that they will produce together where the magic lies. It's the baby that's yet to manifest. Because for many of you, it's in your partnerships that the light will shine brightest, right? And it will be sometimes in how you see the world differently, but to how you harmonize and understand one another in a way that is not common, that you wouldn't necessarily see as uncommon because it's just the way that you two will interact with each other. But you don't know that that's not usual. All you're going to feel is camaraderie with the other person and a trust that can't be broken. And you will then carry that torch forward in a way that somehow benefits the world. But notice that your intention isn't to manipulate another person. It's just that the great creator has cast the right people to support one another in ways that help humanity rise. So you then have these people who are walking in light together, and they're now coming into union with each other, platonic, sexual, or otherwise. Some of you are going to have the kit and caboodle. Some of you are going to meet the love of your life, co-create something incredible, and do everything that you're meant to do. But that means that you have been around for a really long time, and that the great architect is now handing you your dreams. But that comes with responsibilities. Nothing in life is free. And so you have to understand that, again, you have to look back on your journey, and you're going to need to help identify with each other leaders within your community that can help you better assess some of the pitfalls and some of the strengths and weaknesses that you're going to need to have in the new world, in the new casting situation, in the new stage that you're being prepared for. Because there are consequences to that. For example, to the beings I'm speaking to that are now being called to active duty, if you will, where you are somehow forward-facing in your specialty, that your beautiful voice of an angel is now being called to create the music of the spheres as Coldplay did, which, because you know I love Chris Martin. It's my thing. I love Chris Martin. I love his vibration. Everybody knows that. But if you're doing something on a global stage like that, look to examples that surround you like Chris Martin and like Coldplay, who have genuine meaning behind their lyrics that serve a greater audience than just a specific demographic. They're not just creating to make money. They're creating to connect you to a universal consciousness. Go listen to Music of the Spheres and you'll understand exactly what I mean. But that is a skill set that is uncommon that he may not know is uncommon. For him, it's just creativity. But he doesn't know how it heals the hearts of his listeners and how it speaks to a larger concept that is spreading throughout the collective in a way that isn't cancerous, but is actually healing us in a way that brings unity, harmony, and hope, and love and light to the world. That's unique for a world that's so supposedly gone to the wasteland. It's very unique to have that much hope in one human being, but there he is, singing his heart out, bringing us all together, talking about this uplifting stuff and being universally connected and speaking to that consciousness in the world dynamic that tries to make you feel small if you think outside the box. But that's the point. The box has changed, right? We can sense that the great all is tired of the old world. And if we want to move forward, we're going to need to adjust. But we have beings already in place that are beaming examples of how to navigate the seas well. And it's kind of our task, if you're being called now to bridge that work, to then speak to it in an authentic way that doesn't challenge other people's belief systems. Because here's the thing. Many of you have your own houses of faith that you belong to. Many of you follow the path of Jesus. Many of you follow the path of the Buddha. Those books are written, and you have clear guidance on how you do it. It's just about navigating the seas and how you stand in your purpose and in your faith and how you carry that forward. I have a different task. I speak to a lot of people who are caught in the in-between where they don't necessarily belong to a specific house, but still serve the great all, who's what I call the great architect. And so I speak to that aisle, right? Everyone has their own kind of focus and expertise. And then some of us are just beings that are here to bring people together. They bring people from different mindsets and different lenses towards a table where we can have a conversation that we can then audit as a peer group and go, okay, that's the identification of where the pain's coming from. This person hasn't healed this part. How do we help them navigate that in a way that doesn't take away their free will? Because in the end, they have to stand on the mound themselves. And so how do we serve that, if not through the way that we perceive the world and the experiences we share with them in that commonality? You see what I'm saying? So there's so much depth to who you are, but maybe you're not aware of it because you're just stepping into your authenticity. It doesn't matter if people don't like you because you're going to trigger people. You're meant to trigger them. If they're not triggered, then they may not awaken. And so, okay, so they get mad at you. They throw like hissy fits and tantrums because you're obviously blessed with a connection to the divine that other people covet. Well, that's not your responsibility. You're not coveting them. In fact, you're hoping that everyone is blessed. That's why you're standing here and staying behind to serve humanity. Your goal isn't for some sort of prestige or anything, because being on the planet Earth at the moment isn't always necessarily the best situation. There's a lot of things that are going to collapse and a lot of things that are consequential to being here. But if you're in a place of divine love and divine art and you're here to help others in the best way you can in a way that's very humble and kind, then understand that people aren't going to like you all the time. And you're going to have that thicker skin. But when you're a part of this group who I'm speaking to, you will know that you're already prepared. People betraying you or talking about you is not new. They've been doing it since you were born. In fact, many of you have been the black sheep of your family since conception. So if that's the case, then for you, your purpose now is to not even worry about it. It doesn't faze you. Instead, what you're now manifesting is the people who love, support you, and want you to succeed. And because you're going to bring that energy towards you. So for those of you who are actors and those of you who are creatives, understand that that is equally as important as someone who's a political leader or that is somehow a spiritual guide or guru or whatever you want to call it. You're equally as important because you bring beauty into a world lost to illusion. And it's important to understand how strong your signature can be. So to you, what I would say is practice new exercises that help you identify ways to break through your own egoish pride so as to stand in your character definition. Meaning, if you are going for a part and it's a really coveted part, and you know that you're right for it, then you're going to maybe need to think outside the box and do what I call, which is read the script on video to yourself, almost like a mirroring thing, and break yourself down as much as you need to first time. Then re-record it from the notes that you've done and perceive yourself from the context of what they're possibly looking for, and change it at least 5 times in the recording so as to gain the knowledge of which way you're going to play the part, and then go and prepared that way. Because you never know what that unveils or what door that opens for you, because you already have gotten through how you look and how you feel and all that stuff, and now you're to the nitty-gritty. How do I bring this character into full manifestation, and how do I embody this in order to open this doorway that I'm pursuing? And then if you're a singer that is struggling right now, but you have a feeling that you're about to have a reward season, suddenly you're starting to see the signs that the universe is paying attention, and you're starting to feel that pull. What is your purpose in your lyrics that you write? Because I'll tell you a perfect example of really good artists who are really good at branching beyond just materialism or fame, but who actually live in a purpose. I'll give you an example. Katy Perry, for a while, had this really long run where everything she spoke to was from a spiritual perspective of empowerment towards not only women, but everyone, culminating in Firework, which was written by an amazing artist. That person lived their purpose and was rewarded in it because they found a way to speak to not just a demographic, but to humanity in a way that uplifted them. This world needs upliftment in desperate measure because all they're bombarded with is negativity and manipulation and coercion and fear-mongering. So do you hold a candle that stands in opposition with it without antagonizing it, right? There are artists out there who write some amazing music, Sia, as an example, who writes to the human condition in a way that uplifts the people that are listening to her music. And it's not lower vibrational driven. Look, I'm a big fan of hip hop. No one can take that from me. I'm from New Orleans. Hip hop always going to be part of it. But there's a lot of swearing in it. But I convert that energy in a conscious level daily, and it does not bother me. But for other artists, they have a way to still carry the vulgarity of the curse word and somehow still make it empowering to their people. So if you have a lens where you can convert stuff like that, or subvert it, I should say, then carry that torch forward, because there might be a skill set that you're overlooking that you have because it's just who you are. But it's an analysis of your own life experience where you're going to find the keys and motivation to what position and what part you're playing in the new world, right? Because we see it. So understanding stuff like that is super important for this collective. Because as you face each other, and as you guys come into harmony or come into coexistence with each other, it is what you're about to co-create that will be the defining legacy that you will leave. And so there are things that you need to be prepared for. And what I mean for that is when you go from a place of preparation where you've been almost protected from the world around you in order to have you fully maturated to step into your power, the sudden golden opportunity or the certain contract that comes in that breaks you into a world-facing thing removes all of your anonymity and can be worse to some people than death. Because at least in death, there's a reset. In the death principle, we believe that we go to heaven or wherever we think we go. Atheists don't believe anything, but for those of us who believe in spirit and believe in a spiritual center, we know that we go somewhere else, and we review the life we've lived, and then we prepare for the next life cycle if we still have karma to pay. That's just the trajectory that we all kind of agree to. So, but there's that break point, the transition. Like if you're going into a reward season, it used to be that you died and then you got your reward season and were born a king or whatever the fuck whatever you want to believe your fantasy. Like everyone has there's different motions to different oceans. But for some of you, specifically to this class, remember that the offer is, that we're seeing, at least in my perception of the offer, the opportunity being presented is for you to graduate the Earth Academy and then immediately enter graduate studies, meaning there will be no break between you're getting your PhD in self-mastery and immediately going into a teaching role or into a leadership role. You're not going to have a break. So understand that you won't have the death process in between for the transformation. It'll be just suddenly, someday, somehow, some way, someone randomly calls you and says, I have a movie that I think you're perfect for. You could not have foreseen that coming, but it happens. And you accept the role because you know it's the right opportunity. Just read the details. Everyone always read the fine print. I'm just telling you right now. Because if you haven't been paying attention to Hollywood, then you know that you got to be really careful with who you interact with, because some of these people, anyway, I'm not here to castigate, but just be very aware of who you sign on board with and what your affiliations are. But let's say that you get the right person who sees you and knows that you are the exact right fit for their project. The moment they call you and you accept, or that you read the thing and then you finally accept to do this, your world immediately changes. And you suddenly are going to find yourself full frontal known by the world for whatever it is that you're embarking on. Okay. Did you prepare for the loss of anonymity? And are you going to mourn the fact that you are no longer able to go out into the world and do what you used to do? Right? Because I remember posting recently about Michelle Obama, and she had been talking about the cost that comes with people when they're in pursuit of fame, as opposed to people who are in pursuit of purpose. When you're in pursuit of purpose and you're here to do something of service to humanity, some of you are going to be tapped on the shoulder to do it outwardly into a universe that is watching you. But that's one of the great things about being spiritual, is if you are truly a spiritual being, then you know that you have never not been watched. So for you, adapting to the world, catching up to what the universe has already showed you it's been doing, will be a quick adjustment. But for those of you who are in a scientific lens, that have an anonymity where you've never felt seen, suddenly being seen will be way more jarring than for the spiritualist. So just be aware of the consequences that come with dream manifestation. When you co-create with the great architect, understand that it is in your life's journey where you will see the trajectory of possible pitfalls for yourself. And so you need to be conscious of those things so as to be constantly self-aware enough to keep it under control, right? Because everyone in the academy keeps their part of the shadow. It's about how you understand the shadow and how you work on it daily that kind of separates you from the herd. And that awareness then helps you kind of leap over pitfalls that other people might fall into. But it takes a great deal of effort. But luckily for the people I'm speaking to at this level, for the collective consciousness leaders and for the conscious leadership and for the new political people who are going to be replacing the people who are being pushed out, and those of you who are replacing all of the corrupt Hollywood people in order for them to even survive. Because at this point they're basically facing people are so disenfranchised with I mean, we love Marvel Universe, but that's it. There's nothing else. And so people are becoming less and less interested. And so for them to survive, they have to evolve. And those of you I'm speaking to will be filling those parts of what's to come. But there are things that you need to be looking at. For example, if you come together with your forever kingdom person, they might carry baggage in the form of exes that were what we call karmics that try to bring a lot of chaos and try to come between you. And so you need to have an understanding with the universe that whoever you're going to meet or mate with needs to stand in truth and empowerment in a place of light, and that is exceedingly virtuous in comparison to you. And that you both have the basic foundation of anything that we need to say to each other will be said directly. It won't go through assistants. It won't go through my PR people are not going to speak on behalf of my relationship with my partner. We're going to have to talk about this, ensuring that we never let someone else come between us. But the interesting part is if you are matched with the right person, if you are truly in alignment, then understand that there will be a protective quality to both of you. And that is super important to where you're going. Because if you truly are faithful and you truly believe that you are being rewarded for tireless effort to being of service to humanity, and understand that humanity itself will help nurture you and protect you. But you're going to need to drop the baggage that got you here. And that takes a lot of effort. Meaning, yes, it's all of the preparation that you've been through because the magic was in the struggle. But at some point you have to let go of the pain to the struggle in order to just take the wisdom and carry it forward. Because otherwise you bring ties into a new setting, into a new paradigm that has been set for you that can be corrosive or corruptive to something that is not needing it anymore. So sometimes you have to close doors, and sometimes you have to leave those doors closed. And the people from the past may not be allowed to come anywhere near you. And you have to surrender to that reality. Because in the end, why would you, and this is not, I mean, everybody does their own thing. But if someone already has betrayed you, why would you then welcome them back into your paradise? I don't care if they're your family. I'm not. So you see what I'm saying? But you have to think of things long term. And that's one of the things I'm going to end on is long-term trajectory. Because for some people, especially I've noticed this with my friends, they kind of wonder how I know things before they happen. And they kind of look at it from a dark energy or like a questionable thing of like, oh, he's psychic because he investigates all sorts of different philosophies and religions and stuff, that's abnormal. No, it's not. It's just that I've read enough to patch together information, and I look at things in long term. So my brain, without thinking, and many of you probably fall into this alignment, kind of does worst case scenarios before it even builds other possibilities. And since you don't focus on the worst case scenario, it's just like, okay, well, I've been through those before. I mean, look at the life I've had. So let's not focus on that. What are the possibilities that could work out? And let me focus on how to make those things happen. But my brain does all of that without me putting any conscious effort. I do that in my sleep, essentially. But that's not common. But it does look like psychic ability to people who aren't in that alignment, right? Because they just don't understand that basically what I'm looking at is an analysis. I'm basically doing a business analysis to the world. I'm just looking at, well, if this can happen, this can happen, this can happen, then the odds are with these people involved, it'll be this. And then when it happens, people are like, how did you know? Because it makes sense. It's just logic. You know what I mean? So you carry these torches and these beacons within you that you may not necessarily understand to be unusual. And it's going to be in your identifying them that finally puts you at the void. Meaning that when you look at the collapse of certain things, or you can see or foretell that there's a shift coming towards you, you will know that you're prepared by the life trajectory that you've had, and it will help you stand in a strength-empowered place where if people suddenly go off on you and, because when you get your dream life, not everybody will be happy for you. When that stuff happens, you're going to be like, okay, well, that's not anything I need to worry about. So, okay, go with God. Like, it's not my thing. And instead, you're going to be more prepared on, well, okay, well, how do I attract the right energies who are nurturing, loving, and who see the long-term possibilities for humanity and want to work to harmonize things? Because one of my biggest pet peeves, and you guys know this, is that I have a really big moral issue with, and I'm not going to get on a soapbox to end this, but I have a big moral issue with how much food we as Americans throw away in hospitality, right? Because for whatever reason, there are laws that say that it's unsafe for us to package the food that's about to be thrown away and give it to like homeless shelters and places like that. And it drives me nuts because it doesn't make sense. If you can have to go takeout, and it's the same restaurant or place, they can sure as hell can have the same protocol to release the food to go to homeless shelters. And so what I realized within the way that I look at the world is that the reason the policies haven't been changed isn't because it makes sense anymore. It's just because people have a negative reaction to giving food for free to people who aren't putting in an exchange. And so one of the things that many of you who fall into this alignment at this high vibrational conscious leadership will have to do is learn to navigate the seas of what that means. Because I understand from their perspective what they're speaking to. But I encountered an elderly lady recently at my work who really needed food. But because of the reaction that people have to helping people in need because they feel like they should do something, we neglect the people who can't do something. And so if we want to enact change, it's going to require our brains coming together and realizing that since we can't tackle the problem with feeding the homeless because people have a bias towards it, we can look at the same situation and find resolution to helping the elderly or the veterans of our world and help make sure that they are fed. Breaking through that bias and making the policies change happen, right? Because you're now actually doing something that focuses everybody's attention on something that everyone can universally agree. If a mother is brand new to having a baby and we're forcing them to have them now, if they have a baby, then shouldn't they have resources where they get free food, right? If they need it, if they're desperate for it, because we're trying to help the baby. We're building a world and we're raising our collective. To be an American is a very prideful thing. So then why aren't we taking care of those Americans, right? And so the way to circumvent the negativity that comes with people's bias against the the lack of exchange with able-bodied people in the homeless community. You can speak to the non-able-bodied people that still exist within our world that do need us to resolve that issue. There are vats of food thrown away in the tons every day by hotel chains and restaurants that are told that they can't give it out because of health concerns, but simultaneously we allow takeout to come from the same places. Well, if we can allow takeout, then the health concern can't be all that. You know what I'm saying? There's a hole here. And those of us in this alignment are seeing the hole. And since we can't solve it in the sense of looking at it from the homeless standpoint, we can solve it by focusing our energy on single mothers, on the elderly, and our veterans, who are equally going into despair because of the rising cost of everything. But if we can help them by looking at these policies, then everybody wins in the end. And that's what I want to leave the note on. But notice that it's in my perception of the world that I see so clearly through that issue that is different maybe from other people. And so those of you who I'm speaking to that resonate at this vibration, who resonate with the entire message, you're being asked to sorry, I'm sweating. It's hot right here. You're being asked to step into your empowerment because you have all the tools at your disposal. You may just be overlooking it because it's just who you are. Have you ever seen a mother hen in the neighborhood who all the kids love because she helps raise the community? She's the one where all the kids go to because she'd rather keep an eye on them and kind of deal with the chaos of them but keep them safe. Have you ever noticed that energy is very nurturing? And she doesn't think herself anything special. In fact, she typically feels like she's unseen. She feels like she's invisible for the large part. Because when you have that much kids always around you and their friends are always there, it's very hard to have a personal life. So at times she'll feel forgotten, yet she doesn't understand that the entire community rests on her shoulders. She's not aware of it. She's not meant to be, because then she would feel like a heaviness. But in place, she still faces the world with unconditional love, and she raises other people's children in order to help them navigate the seas of their reality. Well, that unsung hero is going to be of great benefit to the right partner, right? And to the right partnerships in the future. And if we nurture and protect more beings like that, it kind of expands compassion and empathy, and it creates a different dynamic to a world stuck in turmoil. So understand that each of you carry a torch of something. You are a piece to the puzzle. What is the piece you hold? Because it's your crowning. It's what makes you stand out. Because if you don't identify it, then it's hard for other people to then see it in you. But understand that for those of you I'm speaking to, you are in alignment, but are you willing to look at the cost and consequences to what you've asked for? And are you still willing to carry the torch forward, right? Because you lose a lot when you gain world acclaim. If you are asked to be a world leader or a spiritual leader or healer, understand that you are then facing a world that's part not wanting to transition and not wanting to change because they're used to suffrage. And then you have another group of people that may covet you or envy you because they feel like you've been given something, a free of hand or something, that because they didn't see the effort. Well, I've documented everything I did, and I think many of you have yourselves. So are you going to stay, and are you going to serve humanity? Because if you are, then it's still going to be work. It's just going to be work that you enjoy. What is your passion? What is your spark? Because if you love humanity the way I do, and if you see the masterpiece of what it really means from the great architect's lens, then you understand that you walk in a tapestry that is made in like Leonardo da Vinci's mind. You walk in a canvas every day in a matrix design that is built to help you thrive. But it's been corrupted. And as the boss cleans house, you are being asked to then step into the roles that you are being given because of the tireless work you've done to your own development. Because a person who invests so wholeheartedly and genuinely into themselves in order to align with the great architect is of great service to a design that needs us to evolve, because otherwise we stagnate. And if we stagnate, then what is the purpose to us being here? This isn't about ego. It's about breaking down the ego in order to find harmony, not in a way that takes away people's freedoms, but that empowers them to stop the struggle in order to understand what it is that we're working towards. People are always going to disagree. There's always going to be some form of tension and drama because that's what makes life worth it. Shadow cannot exist without light, and light cannot do anything without the shadow. It's just you see what I'm saying? So there's always a dance, a cosmic tango that we are a part of. So you're not losing all of that. It's just that there are new challenges and obstacles and things that we need to encounter as this collective species that is much more interesting to the universe than us trying to destroy one another. There are better things to do with our time. And many of you carry genius within you that is new. And many of you are having children that belong in the new world you yourself are creating. It is in how we choose to move right now that is going to make all the difference to their success. There's a reason why there are so many people born with autism and why there's so many people born on the spectrum. They have skill sets that we have not yet defined and cannot help yet because we're trying to make them fit into our world, forgetting that it's that world that is dying out. And the new world coming seems to be much more evolved than where we're coming from right at the moment. But the people I'm speaking to hold the keys to then helping transition those who are going forward in order to stabilize the world that is meant for these beings that we are raising right now, these kids right now. They're not like us because a lot of them are, you could even consider angelic, but they're very precious cargo that is part of a world we're just now building. Remember, the old paradigm is collapsing in on itself, and we are being blessed to witness the development of something new. We are part of that process, and it is you who I'm speaking to that holds the keys to how it will play out. But you're gonna have to let go of the ego, and you're gonna have to work together, because it is in how we're brought together and how we attract our tribes that you will find divine grace and meet the face of God, right? Because it is asking us to evolve. If we're going to break free of the shackles that bind us to the illusion, then it's going to be by us working together that we win the day. And that's all I wanted to say with this post. I hope you guys have a wonderful evening. Thank you very much. Bye.